Welcome, affiliated listeners, to another special episode of the Affiliated Podcast. Special, why you might ask? Because Thomas and I are in the same building, but we're doing the episode in separate locations. So we've never done it like this before. So I think that's kind of interesting and fun. And we do have an amazing guest today. Specifically, we're going to be talking about something Thomas and I hear a lot of people discuss, which is my offer's not working. What do I do next? And today we're going to be able to answer that question with our special guest who's an expert at answering that question. So if you've ever found yourself or currently find yourself in a position where an offer is underperforming, maybe it's just performing average and you need something more, well, today we are going to have Chris Wright, a master marketer, share with us what he does and how he works with clients and how he's been doing it himself for years to evaluate an offer that might be broken, lost, not performing how you want it to be, and he brings it to the promised land. So, Chris, with that, how are you doing today? Glad to bring you in.
I'm doing very well. Happy to be here. Feels overdue.
Yes, for sure. So we've been talking for so long. It's great to finally have you on the podcast with the delightful yellow background. And of course, always joined by the amazing, the wonderful, and soon to be a dad for the second time, Thomas McMahon. Thomas, how are you doing on the penultimate week of your single dad status? Well, meaning you have one solo child. Not
people are like, I'm going to be a dad again. I was like, do you really become a dad again? Or are you just like more of a dad? I don't know how that works. Is it like a percentage? Do you go from like 50% dad to 100% or 100 to 150% dad? You should know, Kyle.
I think it's like 100 to 200. It just goes up in multiples. Soon and each time your pants go from right now, you're wearing like straight, the next second kid pleated. You're going to be right in the pleated zone. Soon enough, the hair fully recedes back by the third, or you lose all color, one of the choices. There's just different sacrifices as you enter your journey into full dad mode. This goes for you, Chris, in case you ever have a second as well. You'll know that pleated pants come right afterwards. It's just required.
Well, me and Thomas realized yesterday that my kid and Thomas have the same birthday.
Good birthday, good people.
Yeah.
January 29th.
Oh, that's wild.
Aquarius rise up. Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool. So it really truly is the age of Aquarius on this call. So even though I think that has a very different theme than what we're talking about, but that's fine.
I'm refrain from singing the Fifth Dimension's great hit from like the 60s. Yeah. But that's my anthem for this time of year. Yeah.
Well, less on children and more on other things that we have to fix that we create problems of, which is offers. So we'll move on to that. So understanding, guys, there's a lot of people that create monsters known as offers that don't work. Some other people create children that aren't functional, which aren't you two. I can't say, jury's still out for me. I don't know. So let's talk about offers when they're just not working. So Chris, just before we jump into that, you've been in the industry for a long time. So I'd love to kind of get a little bit of background because obviously starting from copywriting, freelance copywriting, moving up to fractional CMO, offer owner, to where you're an agency owner, you've really done it all and landed in this place of what I'd really classify you as is a direct response, like a master direct response marketer, master marketer. You've reached that gamer tag level. So just if you could give us kind of like a quick high level view, like how did you get to this point of master marketer and where did you start?
Yeah, sure. So the start came from trying to create a ton of businesses that didn't work and really desperately wanting to be my own boss and write my own ticket, essentially. That led eventually to content marketing. Content marketing led to copywriting. Copywriting led to initially financial copywriting. Kind of learned the craft there 3-4 years or so. Financial copywriting, in my opinion, is the most comprehensive, the hardest copywriting. So it's really a school of hard knocks. And then at some point, I transitioned into health or added it to my kind of quiver. And from there, just worked on a freelance basis until eventually I became retained at within the Agora companies, which is, a huge direct response organization. That was great to work with a really good team there. Eventually, I left and became an offer owner for the first time. That was with a 7-figure offer on ClickBank called Divine Locks. Sold my stake in that. Started a agency model, although I hate the word agency just because of how much baggage it has. and worked with a ton of clients in health, golf, financial, pretty much every big spirituality, every big vertical around I have worked in or been involved with. After the agency, back to the kind of freelancer for hire, transitioning into the fractional CMO role and stuff like that. Throughout that time as well, I've mentored and coached a ton of copywriters and burgeoning marketers. For all of those reasons combined, I've had my fingers in probably at this point thousands of offers, and have received thousands of lessons as a result.
That's awesome. See, I mean, that's all you guys need to get to a master level. You just need all of that, quick and easy, right? No challenges there. That's awesome, Chris. Obviously, seen so much over that time frame. And I imagine with a lot of wins, you've probably seen a lot of losses too. You don't get to a master level by learning through a lot of mistakes, along with all those victories. So, but no, that's fantastic. And I really love about that too is you started off like you just did the work. You didn't start off as millionaire offer owner. You started off by, I'm going to learn how to write. I'm going to do that really well, move up to another large company that's going to pay me to continue to write, and then take those skills and then continue to cascade, grow and grow and grow until, like you said, you transition to be more than, I don't want to say just a copywriter, as if that's not a very valuable, challenging skill, but you're that and so much more, which I think is really exciting. So with that, let's set the stage. Chris, we know right now there's a lot of people that have offers, and maybe they're really excited because just for us dating us, we're at the end of January. So you're real excited. You really thought the offer was going to be fantastic. The numbers come in and it falls short. Oh, what a disappointing feeling. What a bummer day. People are ripping their hairs out. They're kicking their dogs, cursing their homes, whatever it might be. And this is really where you come in. I know you've seen this so many times. What do you do? What do you do next when either that's your offer or somebody's coming to you because the offer just isn't working and they put their heart and soul into making it happen?
Yeah, of course. There's a bunch of tactical things we can do, and we'll look at them in a moment with real world examples and the stats. But the first thing is that I would define what an offer not working actually means, because sometimes people launch an offer and maybe they're newer to the space, and it didn't perform as good as, if not better than, that vertical's top performing offer. And as a result, they're highly disappointed and they, think it didn't work. The reality is that the top performers are either unicorns, like they've just hit everything perfectly from the get-go, or they've been optimized and worked on and tweaked and crafted and molded into that top performing offer, which has had millions, if hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars in ad spend run through it. So there's other ways to make money. You don't always need to be number one, and it's not always, you don't always start being number one. You work your way up there. So that's where I would. So
what are some of the, curious, because I think that's a great thing, right? Like, hey, I'm not the top offer to ever exist, right? Oh, it's a failure. Not necessarily by any means. So what are some healthy benchmarks, or maybe let's say for a health supplement offer? I think that's pretty common, possibly a VSL or TSL. What are some benchmark numbers that you look for that tell you that, hey, this offer is working? Or at least where do you want to start with maybe your first benchmark as you're optimizing?
Yeah, so it depends on the vertical, obviously. Am I right in saying that most people will be in the health supplement space watching this?
I think that would be a safe guess, but let's start there.
So we're all aware of the success the supplements are having right now, but I know there's a lot of people that are trying to figure out other offers, right? I've been chatting with a lot of people who are going, can I get traction still with, $27 to $87 front end digital offer kind of thing? And they're just struggling to kind of break through with those because supplements have taken the air out of the room a bit. So it does run the gamut. Yeah.
Well, in order to make this as relevant to as many people as possible, if we start with my kind of the way I see it, the way I see this offer space, direct response marketing is as a puzzle, and you've just got to figure out the way to put those puzzle pieces together in order to produce results. So all that means is there's definite benchmarks that we can throw out there, but you can configure those benchmarks, those puzzle pieces one way and be a success, and you can do it a completely other way and still be a success. So coming to the supplement space, benchmarks there, a 1% conversion rate, most people would say not good enough to scale. However, doing our puzzle piece analogy, if your average order value is high enough, $220 plus, that 1% suddenly becomes scalable. It just depends. Are you able to control traffic? Do you have an affiliate manager, and so on? So putting the puzzle pieces together in terms of specific benchmarks, and especially in supplements, I like to see out of the gate a 1% conversion rate. And I like to see average order value around 180. Now, 180 on average order value is a lot lower than what you need to scale, but it's the easiest thing to increase out of those two elements. As we know, conversion rates and average order values, they ultimately equal EPCs, which attract affiliates into the space. Beyond that as well, and this is kind of the first thing I would talk about in the sense of your offer hasn't worked, where do we start? I always start kind of in the consumption phase. Like, you've got this offer, you've got this fantastic piece of writing there, it sings off the page and so on, but it doesn't matter how good the copy is if no one's looking at it, if no one's consuming it. So have something like a heat map if you're running a text page, have some kind of video watch data if you are running a video. If you are getting high degrees of consumption, and we can get there with some benchmarks there as well, then it's a good thing. If people are giving you their attention, generally you can turn that into dollars.
Do you have a heat map or sorry, Thomas, you go ahead.
I was curious about that too on those specific tools. I was curious, is there a benchmark of enough traffic or customers that you kind of need to really start chewing on conversion rate optimizing? Because I think there's that dichotomy of, do you even have enough traffic to tell if it's good or not, or do you just have so little traffic and conversions that you really don't know yet, you just need more of that? Where do you kind of land in the traffic versus optimizing in that balance?
Yeah, what is statistical significance, right? I think that word gets thrown around a lot, which I do love to say, because it sounds like people don't want to talk to you at a party because you just said the word statistical significance. So
yeah, in a perfect world, I would always like to see 100 sales minimum. The reality is that not everyone has the resources to get to 100 sales without course correcting and adjusting. So in which case, it's more of what the data is telling you, which determines whether you want to act on it. Because if you've got 100 views and no sales, that might not mean anything, especially if you don't know where those kind of views to your VSL or your text page are coming from. If they're coming from outside of America, those 100 views to your page generally aren't worth much in terms of actual data and significance to you as if they were coming from inside America. So again, huge puzzle piece. In terms of sales, the minimum I would look at to draw a conclusion, and it would be a very loose conclusion, is 10 sales.
10 sales, gotcha. Ooh, okay, that feels scary to me to make a big decision off 10 sales. So let me ask you this. Does the type of test change what you'd be looking for in the sales, or maybe the results in terms of the volatility of difference? So just to kind of expand that, if it was, say, 10 sales, but you saw it was quadrupling conversion rates versus if it's 10 sales and it looks static, like the difference in conversion rates looks static, or vice versa, if it was like 10 sales and you're testing AOV and you just have one big sale in there, so it makes your AOV look a lot higher. Do you kind of gauge some of that based on maybe the results that come in?
Yeah, absolutely. This is why I love the puzzle piece analogy. I'm beating a dead horse with it, but there's so many variables and metrics you have to take into account. So for example, if when I was running Divine Locks, we ended a test very quickly after 20 sales or so. I think it was one email drop. And the reason we did that, I can't remember the specific test, but the reason we did that is because it was just so one-sided. I think it was a conversion, probably a lead or a headline test. So we were really looking at conversion rates. And, you know, I think it was like 18 sales on one page to 2 on the other. And it was just a blowout. The consideration there is around where, like, the less sales you are making decisions based on, the more you have to kind of weight the other variables. So not just what's on the page or you know, the numbers generated from that. If your 10 sales have all come from one traffic source, then, you know, it might just be that traffic source, that list of people, if it's an email drop, they're kind of all the same people, and they might not be the biggest group. There might be another group that if you did an email drop to them, it would tell you another 10 sales, it would tell you an entirely different thing. So you're always having to make these decisions. But again, if you have minimal resources, you want to course correct as quickly as possible. The more kind of data we can get, the better, of course. But yeah, there's just little things. You know, one of the most common mistakes I see newer offer owners make is that they will draw conclusions they'll launch a fantastic VSL. It will look beautiful, and then they'll pay for a drop, or, you know, convince an affiliate to send them traffic from a list which has been built on people that read and purchased through text sales letters. And so there's people who are accustomed to buying through reading, then being sent to an offer that is about watching. And obviously, if people can read, they can also watch something, and there's a bit of crossover. But ultimately, that buyer's list of text people, you know, reading, that's how they purchase. They like to maybe take things at their own pace or whatever. And so that kind of thing is really important as well. You have to take all of these little details into account. Ultimately, you're going to
end up with a boring list of people that like to read things. Blech, you know, we don't want those buyers. Or at least we know those buyers are going to behave differently because, you know, they probably don't own a TV. So no.
Well, no, I think Divine Locks, that was primarily a text sales letter, wasn't it?
Yeah, it worked best there.
Yeah, because I don't want to go down too far down this rabbit hole, but I am curious. We get the question here all the time. I'm sure you do too. Like, should I do a video sales letter or a text sales letter? TSL versus TSL, what works best? A lot of the media buyers demand a VSL because they're used to running that kind of offer. But I don't think a VSL necessarily converts better for everybody, right? I think it is offer dependent and traffic source dependent. But I'm curious where you kind of land on that map, because I think you've done a bit of everything there. Yeah.
Before we do that, I'd love to close the loop just on the technology side, because that's a great question. I mean, we might as well ask if a hot dog is a sandwich next, because I think there's definitely a lot of the controversy on that one, Thomas. It is okay. Disagree. No, but anyway, real fast, Chris, if you could just maybe recommend a heat mapping software that you use, as well as with the video side, just some analytics. If there's a preferred analytics source or hosting source that you like to see, that has been the best for you. And then from there, we'll go on to the VSL TSL question.
Sure. So on the TSL heat map, that would be most likely Lucky Orange.
Lucky Orange.
Pretty accurate.
Why Lucky Orange?
So it's cheaper than Hotjar is, you know, the quick answer there, but it's better than Microsoft Clarity. So Microsoft Clarity is free, but it's, you know, a lot of offer owners I've worked with, they do not trust the data it provides. So Lucky Orange strikes a nice balance between performance and cost. Then on the video side, I think the two big ones are Vidalytics and Wistia. And the reason why they're great is that they'll show you essentially a line chart of people who are on the, you know, on the page watching the video at certain timestamps. They also have various other important metrics like you know, play rate and items like that, which are often overlooked in marketing as well. Because if people, again, consumption, if people aren't pressing play, they're not consuming your wonderful copy.
Yes, play rate. Gosh,
yeah, they have a lot more functionality built in than trying to use YouTube or a free option, right? So yeah,
exactly. And they're built, you know, they are built for marketers. There's no YouTube, you know, button in the bottom right that you can click and escape the page.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. No one wants that. And yes, of course, play rate is I would say underlooked, but highly critical. Boy, is that a critical one. It's like not paying attention who opens your emails. But yeah, play rate's a big one. So, well, cool. Let's go back to the question. Thanks for that, Chris. So Thomas's fantastic question about TSL, VSL. Is one truly better than the other?
Yeah, so for me, again, it comes down to when I work with an offer owner, or even on my own offers, I'm thinking about risk mitigation, because one thing I've always said is that they're, the best copywriter in the world that most people would kind of agree on is Gary Bencivenga. He won something like 8 out of 10 times, so that's an 80% win rate. The best to have ever kind of done it.
That is wild.
Yeah, so there's no guarantees, essentially. So I always, when I'm asked that question by clients or potential clients, I will say, let's minimize your risk. It's always going to be cheaper and quicker to make a TSL than it is to do a VSL. In terms of performance, if resources and risk aren't, considerations for you, then I would always recommend going straight to VSL, especially if you're going to start with, let's say, 4 to 5 different leads. So the first 5 minutes of the VSL to test them. The reason why is that, again, a lot of lists in our industry now are built via video. It's become so dominant. And so we have a lot of people that are used to buying through that video format, on the traffic sources that we want to get in front of, that we want to be exposed to. So that's where I would go. And some of the major affiliates as well, let's say that you I know it's not the topic of the show, but let's say you're doing really well. You've come out of the gate really strong. Some of the biggest affiliates that will run directly from YouTube and native ads and so on, they won't run to a text page. They want a VSL. So if resources aren't an issue, you go with VSL. If you have to carefully manage them and make sure you're scaling profitably, or at least not losing too much money, start with a TSL. Once you get proof that it works, again, because there's no guarantees, the only person or people that know for certain if your offer will work is the market. Once you get that proof of concept, then you invest in the VSL.
I'm glad that you just said what I've been telling clients for a while, because, man, I hope I'm on the same page as someone like Chris Wright. So validating. Okay, thank you.
Now, one thing there, actually. Oh, you go ahead, Thomas.
No, you go. Those goes.
Oh, I was just going to ask on that, what are some of the challenges or things that you have to do when you're converting that TSL to VSL? Because it's not necessarily like a plug and play difference, since the mediums are different, the consumers are a bit different. What have been some of the things that you've noticed you've really had to adjust for when you're making that transition?
Yeah, so for me personally, with my style of copywriting, it's not a huge difference. I write in a very spoken conversational manner anyway. So whether it's a text page or a VSL, that's something that other offer owners might have to consider. Does their TSL sound a little bit like a research report, or something that they submitted in college, more than a conversational kind of piece of work? The biggest consideration for me and the way I go about things is I love the kind of explosion of freedom that a VSL gives you, because suddenly you're able to show a lot more than you can on a TSL. And that showing is a really strong factor, because words are important, but being able to show and demonstrate is even better. So that's the big consideration. It might allow me to cut out like a block of copy and just show something instead. It might allow me to show stuff during a block of copy, which makes it 2-3 times more powerful. That kind of detail.
Nice. It's almost like it's just remembering that as that medium changes, it allows you different marketing tools you could use. So you can almost cut down and be a bit more compact with your copy, which I think is really interesting and a good thing to point out. So that way it doesn't sound like you're mansplaining in your copy as they're describing something that you could see. Yeah. So yeah, that's always good. Perfect.
It's been fascinating to see when I started in the industry what VSLs used to be, which is basically words on a PowerPoint to where the top VSLs are now, which is high production, custom B-roll, hundreds of B-roll for like a 40-minute VSL kind of thing, and edits and cuts to different things that, exactly, empower and the words being said. But it's a total evolution of that. I'm curious, when you look
some
at
of these look like they could be on daytime TV. They look so darn good, I tell you what.
Yeah.
And I used it, I tell you what, to remind people that we're in Idaho, just in case.
Well, some have been on daytime TV. What was the the Soulmate sketch? I got a lot of the play on talk shows. Yeah.
Yes, that did. That's true. So, yes.
I was curious, Chris, like when you're looking at maybe past, when you start saying like the first 5 minutes or the headlines and like kind of the big lever movers for getting conversion rate lifts, what's your approach when coming up and running those kind of split tests head to head? Like, where do you go into your mind palace to start coming up with those hooks? Like, what's your strategy for implementing those big tests?
Yeah, absolutely. So, if we take it on from the perspective that something hasn't quite worked and we haven't quite hit the kind of EPCs that we need to work there. Everything, like you say, the biggest needle movers generally are going to be in that first 5 minutes, whether it's a text page or a video page. It's going to be the headlines. It's going to be the leads. Again, I'm always looking at consumption. So just quick rule of thumb there, because I want to make sure we cover it. But in a TSL, if you're losing, let's say, more than 10 to 15% of people by the time you get to the end of your lead, that you're seeing this on Lucky Orange or whatever, not more than, you haven't got 90% or 85% of people still on the page at the end of your lead, then you might want to look at rewriting that lead, or at least chopping it down a little bit. Because remember, like when it's a text page, people, if people aren't even bothering to kind of just like quickly scroll on their phone to just kind of take it all in, then you're not hooking them at all. On VSLs, you're going to expect to lose 50% of people within that first 5 minutes. So what you're looking for on VSLs is that the losses stabilize after that 5 minute mark, and then it's like it's not a cliff edge anymore. It's a slow decline. Again, if you're losing more than that, or if like that cliff edge never stops being a cliff edge, then if it never stops being a cliff edge, it might be a bigger problem than the lead. But definitely rewrite the lead anyway. So let's talk headlines. Again, like this, we're talking the big needle movers, headlines, leads. That's because it's upstream. It's the first thing people see. More people are going to see that first minute of your VSL or your text sales letter than the last 20 minutes of your offer. So naturally, we're going to start with headlines. Headlines as well, I would say, super overlooked now on VSLs, especially on and that's kind of crossed over to TSLs. No one wants a headline on their video sales letter anymore, and it's because of a split test that I think it was researched it, where they got a lift from not having the headline. But again, like every offer is its own puzzle, and that is a good split test. That may work for a set bunch of offers, but it might be not serving a bunch of other offers. So something I always want to test. So if I give you one example on a weight loss offer, and this will kind of start to build out the picture of my approach to it. My approach of headlines is very much about how can I present something entirely different here and take a new angle on it? Because I don't want to I'll make tweaks if I've got a winner. If I've got a winner, I'm looking to find that like 10% lift. But if we're, topic here, if something hasn't worked, then I got to do something different at this point, because it's the Hail Mary throw.
Well, I love that. I think it's important to remember, though, that there's a big distinction about, I see people go to optimize an offer that's not working, and they're like, I'm going to change button color. Big miss. Like if you're far away, you should be swinging big until you're at least putting the ball in the playing field. And then from there, hey, if it's winning, it's working, then we could polish to start hitting home runs versus triples. But like, yeah, you need to be playing the game before you're and making big swings until then. So I'm just glad you brought that up.
Yeah. We're looking for 50% lifts at a minimum off a single test, if we've got it right. So what, the weight loss offer example, at first we had a very direct headline. And the change here, obviously I can't start talking about an entirely different concept. It has to still, the sales letter is what the sales letter is. So I have to find a way to present a unique headline here without, completely losing the essence of the promo. So we went from a very direct one, which was like reignite your fat sales with this breakthrough, that kind of approach, to something that was a lot more story focused. The first line being, I never thought my lying husband and his skinny ex-high school sweetheart would put me in the hospital. And there's more to that headline complex.
Big open loop.
Wait, and that was just the headline. That was in the opening. So that's the headline above the VSL?
Yeah, headline above the VSL. That's not the whole thing. There's more open loops in there as well. But that's like to demonstrate I've gone from a direct one to a story one. It's a totally different approach. And the result there, without affecting the average order value at all, we boosted the conversion rate by 56% just with a headline change.
Wow.
Wow.
Is that, I'm curious because I think people hear that.
I didn't mean for us to synchronize our wow there, by the way, Tom.
Wow. Because I think people hear like, oh, that boosts conversion rate by X. That's so cool. Is it boosting conversion rate because it's getting more people to actually see the offer at whenever the offer presents itself, the buy buttons drop, if you will?
Like, did the play rate increase almost?
Well, this was a text page, and the thing is that you got to grab attention. So there's going to be that. There's going to be probably more people making it all the way down. And this is why I think it's so overlooked to test headlines on VSLs. We forget that it's the first thing we see. It's like first impressions. When you meet someone and they give you a bad first impression, you don't like them. They give you a good one, you do like them. And that has a residue that sticks around. So that kind of residue is going to be flowing throughout that thing, throughout their time reading that page. And especially with a VSL, if it's a VSL which doesn't go to full screen, that headline is right at the top of the page throughout the entire video. So it's always influencing them. It's really kind of like an 80-20 thing, but more like a 1 to 99 thing, because these are a handful of words in an 8,000 word promo offer. And they make such a big difference. There's a lot of magic to it. And I mean, I got another example here, which I dug out yesterday.
Example away. Yes, we're all for the examples here.
For sure. This one, again, same thing. Like this promo was doing well anyway. But I think we still wanted, I mean, we relentlessly test all the time. That's just something you have to do. But again, this demonstrates the different approach that you've got to take, this radically different angle. So spirituality offer, we had a mechanism focused headline. So, focusing on what we were calling the mechanism and, how that will improve your life. And we changed it to a simple misconception headline. So completely different again. The misconception headline started off as everything we're told about wealth manifestation is a lie. It's not particularly special, to be honest.
Controversial claim, yeah.
Yeah, it's totally different to what was there. There's no fancy, mechanistic aspect to it, but that produced a 61% conversion rate boost, which again was great because that was already on a winner.
Oh wow! Wow, so it was already doing well, but moving to that more contrarian, volatile viewpoint that was so strong had a huge effect on it. That's great.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that any one of these, that the misconception is always going to be the thing that wins, but what it really is demonstrating is that you take this wildly different approach. You see which approach wins. And then once you know that, let's say it's your mechanistic one or your story approach that works, then once you've got a winner, then you iterate that. Then you can change, a handful of words or the eyebrow copy or, that's where you start to iterate and improve on that. But until you have one that's a winner, don't tweak around the edges, go for the big hits.
Those are great examples of, because I see so many, especially newer affiliates, even on bridge pages or sellers, right? They're kind of testing the same type of hook, even if it's big swings against the, how to lose X pounds in a week, right? Versus how to burn your fat cells off, right? It's very like the same type of hook. I've never really thought about it that way versus story hook and claim hook, right? All these different things there. So that's a great example of really two different things there. I'm curious on like the relationship from say the lead to the sales page. So I think that's a step people miss, which is either the swipe, the email subject line and the swipe copy, email body copy, or the ad. Can you talk a little bit about how you bridge those gaps and how you approach helping with the very, very top of funnel and getting the click to the sales page? Because I think that's where you're talking headline, right? That's a kind of almost the true headline, if you will, driving that curiosity and how you're testing those things.
Yeah, the general rule of thumb, and again, everything is a puzzle piece, and I'll explain why I'm, hedging that a little bit in a moment. But the general rule of thumb is that if someone is clicking, a click driver, whether it's an ad, a swipe, whatever it is, and they're ending up on a page and going, what the hell is this? Then, you've done something wrong. There needs to be a congruency from what you're talking about in your swipe, for example, into the sales page. So that's going to be the key. The caveat there is that very, very rarely you will find an email swipe that works so well, but it makes absolute it gives nothing away. It's got no details, and it might not be connected at all to the main page. That's happened a few times within Agora. It's really interesting, but that's really the key, is like consistency.
They really get like a killer swipe unrelated to the offer.
Yeah, it's again very rare, but it's just one of those ones where it's like it might be like 4 lines and so blind, but it just does really well. But that principle of like congruency from the click driver to the lead, that applies from the VSL through your upsells, because you want people to know that they're still on the same page. So the color scheme should be the same. If they're going through your upsell sequence, you want the banners or whatever to be the same. That congruency runs all the way through, and it's going to only increase conversion rate there.
Now, one question, one area that I'd love for you to talk about, me some tips or some really good tactics that you tend to use or see missed in the first upsell, in OTO1. It's such a critical component that a lot of people are always trying to focus on, but we see a lot of people miss on their first upsell. So walk me through kind of like what are some benchmark numbers that you're looking for on a first upsell, and some of the tactics that you see that people just seem to be missing a ton that you normally solve when they come to you going, Chris, my upsell is not working.
Yeah. So I feel like I'm beating a dead horse again, but so if you have
Peter's
a VSL,
really after us with all this dead horse talk, Chris. Yeah, we need to
very tender.
ease off on this poor dead horse. I mean, I'm excited to eat it later, but I'm not sure. Oh, that was a hearty laugh filled with all sorts of phlegm. Sorry about that. All right.
Oh yeah. So if you have a VSL, your upsell one at a minimum should be a VSL as well. A lot of the time people just put up text pages because they're cheaper and so on. That's a big needle mover. Benchmarks, I want to see at least a 25% take rate on that first upsell, at least. And really we want to be, depending on what the product is, we want to be pushing, if it's a supplement, try and push 35%. That's going to be really important for, just.
And is that pretty universal across like digital, info, supplement, health? Like if it's not at least at 25%, you're probably missing.
I would say so.
Okay.
Obviously price points, that changes things, but that
was my question there on price point, because people, I've got a 50% take rate on upsell one. I'm like, you're probably undercharging then. It's like, or you need to you probably could raise AOV and lower take rate a bit and improve the offer performance. Like, where do you land on if it's 25 to 35% take rate? I guess what dollar amount are you trying to add to the overall order? Maybe that's a percentage too in that realm.
Yeah. So there's a wider topic here. Generally, for most successful offers, you're going to have a first upsell, which is the most important upsell, which is selling more of the same. So if it's a supplement funnel and they've bought, let's say it was Divine Locks, the first upsell is more Divine Locks. And the reason why is that they've just committed 30 minutes of their life to really buying into that product through the marketing. And so that's really important. So what we want to do is try and increase our AOV as much as possible on that first upsell. It's such a priority. The second priority for me is trying to get as much on the front end, trying to get as many people into the 6 bottle option as we can. After that first upsell, then this is where it gets really interesting, because generally a lot of business owners that I talk to, they are reluctant to keep adding upsells now, upsell 2 and upsell 3. And the reason why is that they see their chargebacks and their refunds and, the negative metrics, and they are massively outweighed by people that have bought through the full upsell sequence, because they're not as bought into those upsell products. They're buying because they've already bought, if that makes sense. They're impulse purchases. And so you can have better metrics when you take into account the wider scope from just doing that first upsell. When it comes down to charging enough and whatever, I think that's all about testing again. So what is your goal? Your goal with that first upsell has to be average order value. So I would tweak the numbers around price testing. That's an often overlooked item that offer owners should do. If you raise prices, you'll probably sell less, but on the first upsell, it doesn't really matter, because you're just trying to boost that average order value as high as we can.
Well, I was curious on is there any other elements of the funnel you really like to mess with when you're first working with a client? Is it like order bumps? Is it exit offers on the lander or upsell play? Like, what are other little things you're trying to test for maybe more incremental gains, but things that can have a pretty big lift over the long term?
Yeah, I mean, I've got some big gains ones, which we can still talk about. So the first one would be leads. We've mentioned their importance a few times now, but the leads are fantastic, because you convince people to read the lead with your headline, and then you convince people to read the rest of the promo with the lead. And so focusing on making that lead as impactful and powerful as we can really has powerful downstream effects. One example of this is that we had a client come to me with a good offer, but it was only like 0.5% conversion rate, something like that.
No.
And it was a good offer because they had a really high average order value already.
Yeah,
like super high.
Yeah,
higher than most. And so I knew just looking at what was in front of me, that if I could increase that average order, the conversion rate by a fraction, that promo would be highly scalable for them. They controlled their own traffic. They had good connections to bring in extra traffic and so on. They had everything they needed to be a success. That was already a story-based lead, if I recall, but I didn't find the lead story super compelling. So it was a really obvious needle mover for me. Of course, we did, change some of the mechanism, edited copy throughout. 80% of that offer was the same before we came along. We had a brand new story lead, and that story lead, not only did it produce a 40% lift in conversion rates, it also increased the average order value to over $300 on a supplement.
No way, because it was already super high, right?
Yeah,
wow.
Super scalable. Still a relatively low conversion rate, but we got it to a place where it could just go to the moon. So that's a big one. Leads are super important. And I would also say that the approach that I have with headlines of like finding a radically different approach is the same thing to do there. Like if you have a story-based lead and it hasn't worked, try a science/discovery-based lead, and vice versa. At the same time, I guess we'll come on to this a bit later, but maybe your story sucks and you just need a different story. That's always worth trying out as well. Another one of those big needle movers that I mentioned is just the general kind of idea that you're putting forward into the world. You'll see copywriters and marketers talk about Big ideas quite a lot. I don't necessarily think you need one outside of every financial promotion. Like they're a lot more common in the financial vertical, but in health you can still find them. And I have a business partner who you guys both know, Jade. We run an offer called Seri Skin, and on its very first drop it was highly profitable. We got our drop money back and made money on top of it. So we thought we were onto a winner from the get-go. Then on our next drop, it didn't do as well. And so suddenly we had to, make changes, doing the things I've talked about here, rewriting leads, headlines, all of that kind of thing. But we couldn't quite find the needle mover until our most recent rewrite, where we just changed the big idea that we were putting forward. And so now we have an angle, and this is our headline: soak this plump peptide into your skin to smooth away wrinkles. And so what we've got here is a new paradigm. So soak this thing into your skin. I haven't seen it before necessarily. It might exist, but maybe not at scale. And then also we've got a new solution, which is the plump peptide. Putting a brand new thing forward. The result is 68% boost in conversion rate versus our old control, 44% increase in average order value versus the old control. So
that's awesome. That is awesome.
Yeah, super vital one. So those,
well, especially I think on the skincare one, you have the plump, the idea of the plump.
That's what
plump
you want.
Again?
It's
peptide.
It's just
plump peptide, which peptides are familiar, so people could connect with that. But the plump side is so benefit oriented, and it just sounds nice to say, a plump peptide. It kind of makes me hungry, which means maybe it's lunchtime. I'm not quite sure, but no, that's a really great one. I really like that it sounds unique, and the idea also of soaking, I think, makes a ton of sense. Now you're already putting people to this idea of absorption. So I'm absorbing plump proteins that are going to make my skin look young and beautiful. Like right from that headline, you could already kind of get an idea of what's going to be happening. I just think that's really, really impactful and awesome. So, with that, actually, I think that transitions that what I'd love right now, Chris, like we could move in. So we have the process here. So before we go into, there's one part I want to talk about, like, when do you just say enough's enough, the offer doesn't work? But before that, I'd love to get some quick hits of just some recent wins. This is kind of like your brag section. So you get to go out and just talk about some cool tests that you feel people should be running, things you see that businesses aren't doing, and maybe just some things. If you had like your soapbox, like all offer owners, Chris Wright decrees, this is what you should be doing. We'd love to get some of those. Give us maybe about 3 if you could. How does that sound?
Yeah, sure. So the first one is the one that, I just mentioned with the weight loss offer. Test a new lead. They are so impactful, so important. So definitely do that. And to kind of emphasize how important that is, we slightly different, not a health supplement, but a e-commerce toothbrush offer. That's one that I've written a story focused page for as well, and that doubled the performance of any other page. It literally doubled. Story is the biggest. I will say it. It is the biggest needle mover that I often see in these kind of offers. Stories sell. Stories grab attention. Stories are often overlooked. So definitely do that. Another one, which I think has a really good lesson behind it as well, in the sense of the puzzle, the grand puzzle I keep talking about. Another spirituality offer. This one was really cranking, 2.96% conversion rate, really going. I wrote a lead for it, one that kind of got to the story much quicker. So there's a little throwback there as well. And the result is that conversion rate actually dropped to 2.74%. But that lead became the new control. And the reason why it became the new control is that average order value was 41% higher from that lower conversion rate. So when you take those two pieces together, that lower conversion rate but that much higher average order value, it was so much more scalable. And that's one that obviously the client loves it, but also when I talk to other people in the industry, they realize that I wrote it, and they're like, wow, that was an amazing promo for us as affiliates. So that's kind of what you need. It's those two numbers, AOV, CVRs. Beyond that,
I love that too, because, well, real fast, I want to pause on that because I think that's really good that lots of times people don't think about that relationship to conversion and average order value. Like, I have an example of the complete reverse of that, where an offer was hitting a conversion rate that was a little bit less 1%, but they were very AOV focused. Like, we have like a $250 AOV. They dropped the price of their front end products down, and their AOV went down from, I think it was like 230 down to like 187. So whatever percentage that was, it's a pretty substantial decrease, but their conversion rate almost doubled. And it was at that level that it made it to where the new offer with a pretty substantially lower AOV was actually infinitely more scalable, because the conversion, that big lift in the conversion made such a massive difference in the economics of the offer. So I love that you highlight that example. It's not always the exact number you're looking for. You could actually see a reduction in number, and it'll increase your overall velocity for an offer, depending on how that works. So anyway, those are great examples. So we got two so far, or maybe that was one. No, it was two. We have two so far. So give us the third and final Chris thing that you should know.
I'll give you a shotgun approach. So the first one would be the price testing. Absolutely test your price. People don't want to see their conversion rates drop or the average order value drop, because, I don't know, maybe people ascribe their kind of worth to it or identity to it. But, like,
my wife will never love me if my AOV is not over 200, Chris. How do you make it happen?
Exactly. So it's a huge, huge needle mover, and it's so easy to implement. You don't need to hire anyone. You just, change the setup and what it says on the text page, and anyone could do that in HTML. So super easy to do and can produce crazy results that you're not expecting. Second shotgun one, headlines. All the reasons we talked about, they're not sexy right now. They are not being tested enough. Definitely do that. And then the third one, often overlooked as well. And there's other needle movers, right? There's mechanisms. There's sometimes your offer is just a bad offer, all of that kind of thing. But an often overlooked one, assuming you have a good offer, assuming the copy is all good, is the buy box itself. And so there's so much you can do on that tiny bit of real estate. Not only are you presenting an offer there, but you are providing hope. You're giving them you're showing them the path to take to, their dream goal, whatever you are ultimately, the solution you're ultimately selling. So test your buy box copy. If it's add to cart now, test something like set me free. That's one we ran with Divine Locks, and it works the best, and to this day. They don't all need to be fancy. They don't all need to be a set me free. Sometimes add to cart does work best. It could be buy now, order now, like all of those things. Test them, really important. Also, that tiny bit of real estate can be really influential in, let's say you have a 136 supplement offer. It's always, if you're looking to increase average order value, you will always see an increase by making it very clear that someone has to pay shipping if they order just one bottle. Free shipping if they order 3 or 6. You will always see, because it will push people into that. It can sometimes be enough to convince a 1 bottle buyer to buy 3 bottles instead. You also want to do things like, if you have bonuses, you put it in the picture, emphasize which ones get free shipping, use little headline copy, tag copy to say most popular or customer recommended. There's so much influence that you can do in such a small space of time. From there into the checkout page, sometimes you're limited in exactly what you can put on there, but order bumps are always helpful. But also kind of let them know that, well done, you've taken the first step to changing your life. All you need, the next step is to fill out your payment details. That kind of copy works as well.
Nice. I love the congratulations on the order form. I know we talk about that in the first upsell or thank you page, but kind of they click there. I really like that. Side note, someone needs to make this for a CTA button. I don't know what the target demographic would be. I would do it for like a BizOp or IM offer. I would get like, it probably is a licensing issue, but like a Mandalorian head, and then it would say, "This is the way," and it would swipe across. This is the way. Because I would buy whatever it was. At least I'd be looking at their order form like 4 or 5 times. Show all your friends. Look at this. So No,
You would
all
make
marketers.
millions.
Someone make that and send it to me, please. Make it and send it to me, and then get sued by Disney later. But it'll be really fun for that little bit beforehand. Well, those are fantastic. I just want to recap too. I think price testing. I just want to talk about that again. I can't tell you how big of an opportunity that is in testing, because I don't know the last time I talked to somebody that actually tested their prices. They were looking at prices that they see on the supplements, and they're like, oh yeah, this is what's in the marketplace. This is the price that everyone else is doing. And they just run with it. And I could almost tell you, I'm not even sure the original creators of that price ever tested anything different. So I'm just putting it out there that price testing and supplements could be a massive differentiator, especially considering we have a price sensitivity and a lot of people are concerned about the economy right now. I feel like testing a price would be a super smart idea. So really glad you brought that up, Chris, as well as the CTA is another great area to focus on, along with headlines, which should always be the first place that you test as I'm going on those headlines. So great recap there.
Add to that as well. A lot of the time, when people are charging a more premium price, it might be because their product is just more premium, not necessarily that it works. What am I saying? No, not that the price point works. They might have to price at that point because they have a premium product and therefore they have higher costs and they cannot have a successful funnel at a lower price point. So they might be trapped and you might be copying them thinking that's the best way to do it, when in reality you have this other lever that you can pull to give yourself the edge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's really good. So price, if there's one thing, I'll be honest, if there's one thing you guys take out of this entire thing, which there shouldn't be, there should be many, there should at least be 3 because Chris gave us 3 awesome things to focus on, but is price testing. If your offer is not performing where you think it should right now, I would definitely encourage you to test some prices. Now, one of the things that we haven't talked about in here, we talked about how we're going to fix everything, but just like my to-do list and things at home, I can't fix everything as much as I might try, and so cannot a lot of people. So at what point do you kind of look at an offer and say, I need to put it to bed? I need to, as the creative writing phrase goes, kill your darlings. And for those that are not aware, we're not looking to kill darlings. It's just if you love something, you try and make it work. There just has to be a point that you say, as much as you love it, it needs to die, because no one else loves this like you do. So, walk a little bit through about like, how do you know when to let go and put that little darling to bed as a broken dream instead of an inevitable one?
Yeah, of course. So again, it comes down to the resources available. If you have a bunch and the will as well, because there's an emotional component to this when you've invested 3 months of your time in something and it hasn't worked, and that is draining. But I would always test kind of the stuff we talked about today, a new story outright, a new mechanism as well. I know we haven't touched too much on that, and potentially a new offer. So with the offer, that's often overlooked as well. People think that, the copy can compensate for a pretty generic or boring product. Your product has to have some kind of uniqueness and novelty and interest and work to do well. It's just the copy is what helps kind of amplify that message out into the world. So those things, if the resources aren't super available, then again, we got to use that data to identify like what the biggest needle mover is that we can test with the resources that we have. But generally, if after lots of testing or, not much because you don't have the option, I would be looking at, for a supplement funnel, let's say, if this thing can't get above 0.5% conversion rate, no matter what you do, and if your average order value is below $180 and that doesn't seem to move either, then I think it's just got to be cold, unfortunately. Generally, again, like if this thing is like 0.6%, I'm pretty confident in most situations that I could get that to 1%, and then I can get the average order value up super high. And because of that, I know that this funnel with the right skill set in driving traffic can scale. So it's not something to give up on. If you're only looking for, runaway winners, then you'd probably cut anything with a 1% or below conversion rate. But if we're just looking, this thing hasn't worked yet, could it work or should I kill it? General rule of thumb in the supplement space, less than 0.5% conversion rate, and anything below $180 in average order value.
Nice. So you kind of send like a death threshold, right? Like if it's underneath here, I've tried enough.
Do not resuscitate. DNR.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I think the worst thing people can do
Thomas,
is just...
any other questions? Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, the worst thing people can do is just keep committing time and attention to something which hasn't got a chance to get there. Because again, only the market decides whether this stuff will work or not. And if you are, sometimes stuff can be turned around, sometimes they can't. So yeah, just even if you don't take my criteria, set yourself a criteria and a time frame. And if it hasn't worked within, hit that criteria within, let's say 90 days, then you move on to something else because you don't want to keep wasting your time there.
Yeah. I mean, listen, wasting your time towards something you might love is my main dating proposition, but I understand it's probably not a good business tactic. So, Thomas, what were you going to say?
I was going to say that I find people set the wrong criteria a lot of times. They're going to say, if I don't sell this many units or if I don't get this much money back in this time frame, I'm going to call it a loser, right? But if you haven't done all the things you're talking about doing, Chris, how can you really call it a loser? So if your barometer is, I'm going to do this thing every day, I'm going to run this much traffic to it, I'm going to generate this many clicks to it, right? If those things are your barometer to choose if it's a winner or not, that's where you'll probably back into success more often than not.
Yeah, it's really about finding a process as well. The guys and girls that have been doing this for the longest time and having the most success, they have fantastic processes and they know to not spend too long on losers and to double down on the winners. Beautiful.
Thomas, any other questions before? I realize Chris has given us like almost an hour of just pure nuggets and awesome stuff. So I want to see if there's any questions before we tell people how they could get a hold of Chris, how they could work with Chris, how Chris could delightfully, in a British way, fix their offers or wherever they might need, build them for them. But yeah, so super curious, Thomas, if you have any other questions before I let him go.
I do, but we're running on time, so I won't keep diving into other stuff. I did like how you called out, right, that you need to validate the offer for the purchased and then use that to frame up the upsell versus just going. I see a lot of people frame up an upsell almost like it's a unique offer in itself, and they almost disparage the other thing you just bought. It's like almost, hey, forget that thing you just bought. Here's a giant sales page now for this upsell, and it's like there's a reason why we see upsell one have the highest chargeback and refund rates. And so if you can validate the purchase, build on that to then frame the upsell, you'll probably have a better time keeping a lot of those sales that are happening and making sure the customer's actually getting through your flow that way. So I was glad you brought that up. But no, I'd encourage everyone to go check out Chris's stuff as he's about to drop it. Because, yeah, I've worked with quite a few of the offers you've been on, and the process you take with improving them has been very impressive. And seeing the variety of offers you've gotten off the ground from all different kinds of verticals and niches has been cool. I don't see many people like you who operate in multiple verticals like that. Usually they're not stuck, I want to say. Usually they're specialized in very one thing. But you being able to see so much and pull so many levers across different types of offers is invigorating.
Nice. Yes, which is where you get the moniker direct response master marketer, because no niche can hold you, Chris. Yeah. Yes, it does. It does. Which we might be nerds because that's what I'm sure, right? Yeah, probably somewhere. Awesome, man. Well, on that note, I know you need to go out there and catch them all for those marketers that are in need of your help. And for those of you, if they need to get a hold of you, what is the best way if they want to get in contact with you? Through email? Should you put your cell phone out there so anybody could just send you text messages at any point in time? I would not encourage it. Paul Hoffman did that just in case I know there's a precedent. But how do the people get a hold of you?
Yeah, two easiest ways to reach me. One is Facebook, so facebook.com/Chris Wright, WRIGHTO, as in the letter O and not 0. That'll take you directly to my profile. Chances are we have mutuals and I will accept you and we can have a chat there. The second way is just via email. So that's chris@yourconversion.partners. So chris@yourconversionpartners.partners for that one. So just an email. So whichever one you prefer.
Yeah. And we'll put that in the show notes too, just so if people are like me and they can't auditorily spell anything, like I would have been a nightmare in a spelling bee.
Okay.
So yeah, that we'll make sure to put on the show notes for people that are challenged like me, to be able to click and go connect with Chris, whether it be Facebook or email. You need to do it. He's a great guy. He's a great person to work with, and you're about to have a great offer if you're going to be working with him as well. So with that, if there's any, unless you want to leave something else for the people, Chris, we'll let you go about the rest of your day to go snuggle your delightful baby, have a wonderful evening, and keep making some great offers.
Awesome. Yep. Nothing from me. Thank you so much for having me. It's been good. We went on a few tangents, but we got back to the main thread.
What would be an episode without some tangents? It'd be no fun. It'd be like wine without tannins. No one wants that. So with that, Thomas, what do we tell the people? Well, first I should say, please, guys, rate, review, subscribe. If you have any questions or if there's subjects you'd like us to talk about or people you'd like us to go find an interview, please email us at affiliated@clickbank.com. We do read that email. We're going to look at it. That's where you know all the comments that people say about Thomas looking like Seth Rogen that still seem to come in constantly. So please keep him going. It fills his heart up. Until next time, though, what do we tell the people, Thomas?
Happy scaling, everybody.
Happy scaling. All right, guys, you have a good one. Thanks so much.